Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta, now we continue with the teaching on the 10 negative actions in the principle of cause and effect. We previously covered lying. Today we'll discuss the second one, sowing discord. Sowing discord is divided into two types, open divisive speech and covert divisive speech. First, let's discuss open divisive speech. What is open divisive speech? Generally, it refers to authoritative people speaking divisively in the presence of both parties, directly with divisive speech to cause their relationship to break and part ways. Openly, in a place where both people are present, destroying their relationship. For example, saying, "This person secretly speaks ill of you with such and such harsh words and has openly done such and such harmful things to persecute you. Yet today you act as if nothing has happened, being especially intimate. How can this be? Actually, the relationship between you two shouldn't be like this." Such direct and straightforward divisive language is called open divisive speech. People with power and status aren't afraid of their displeasure afterward, so they speak directly to them. Because of their words, their relationship ultimately breaks apart. This phenomenon is quite common in daily life. Some people think divisive speech is merely one method of communication between people. They don't realize it has great negative consequences. This is a blind spot for Buddhists. As Buddhists, they have no fear of speaking divisively to others, considering it a natural thing. Actually, this attitude, way of thinking, and speech are all unreasonable. On the surface, you're destroying the relationship between two people, but actually, in this very life, everything becomes unfavorable for yourself, and it becomes the root cause for rebirth in hell in the next life. It seems that in the Sutra on the Mahayana practice of the 6 perfections, it also states, using divisive speech to create discord between intimate and distant relations, employing cunning schemes to make hearts hate each other, one falls into hell with no hope of escape. If you use divisive speech to destroy others' relationships through cunning methods, making others upset and turning them into enemies with great dissatisfaction, then in the next life you will actually fall into hell. This is taught in the Buddha's sutras. Therefore, Buddhists here should indeed carefully contemplate the principles of cause and effect in detail. Whether what we think and do conforms to the laws of cause and effect. If it doesn't conform to these laws, then we will experience suffering within ourselves. For example, people now create various things that don't align with natural laws, manufacturing nuclear weapons or behaviors that go against the entire universal order, leading to imbalance of the 4 elements and various disasters. This is also a natural law. Similarly, whether in speech or actions, if anything doesn't conform to these laws, then you will experience suffering. So some people, as long as they have a bit of status and power, seem to not care about destroying relationships between others. Actually, this is an extremely frightening thing. As people who believe in cause and effect, this certainly deserves reflection, deep thought, and observation. This is called open divisive speech. There's also another type called covert divisive speech. Originally, 2 people are compatible and harmonious, but another person goes to one of them and says, "You are truly sincere and caring toward him," but he criticizes and gossips about you and often creates obstacles for you behind your back. Using such divisive speech behind the scenes to make both parties go their separate ways is called covert divisive speech. They might not dare to say it openly, but behind the scenes they often speak about others' faults and gossip, thus destroying others' relationships. This should actually be a particularly bad thing. Whether among spiritual friends or ordinary people in the world today, I think it's better to speak directly and straightforwardly about matters. Perhaps the other person cannot accept it. If they can't accept it, the fact is still the same. If you want to say something, it's better to say it. There's no need to speak about others' many faults behind their backs, and try to speak less about interpersonal relationships. This would conform to the laws of cause and effect. Otherwise, we see some people who have excellent relationships with everyone face to face, but behind the scenes create many troublesome situations. Whether this is due to some people's habitual tendencies or ignorance is hard to say. Humans are a particularly complex group, so each person's foundation, inclinations, and karma are all different. As a result, when living together, various discord often arises. This is what's called divisive speech. Among all divisive speech, breaking the harmony of the Sangha is the most serious. Breaking the harmony of the Sangha indeed has tremendously grave consequences. Therefore, in the Mahashasaka Vinaya, the Mahashasaka Vinaya was brought from Sri Lanka by Faxian in the past. Actually, the Mahashasaka Vinaya belongs to the Mahashasaka school, a Theravada sect, and is basically the same as the Vinaya of Southern Buddhism. There's a teaching in this text: the assembly gathered in harmony brings joy. Harmony always brings peace and security. If one breaks the harmony of the Sangha, one suffers in hell for an eon. This means that if the Sangha members live together harmoniously, there is great merit and happiness. If someone creates discord among the Sangha and breaks their harmony, they will suffer for an entire eon. This sutra also says something similar to what we mentioned before. The assembly gathered in harmony brings joy. Harmony always brings peace and security. If one harmonizes and unites the Sangha, one enjoys heavenly bliss for an eon. This is the opposite content of the previous teaching. If you bring the Sangha together in harmony, there is happiness and peace even in this very life. And harmonizing the Sangha brings heavenly happiness for an entire eon. Although nowadays one cannot truly commit the sin of breaking the harmony of the Sangha, among Sangha members and Sangha members, between teachers and teachers, between spiritual friends and spiritual friends, we should find ways to let them work together for the Dharma and for sentient beings. We shouldn't engage in endless disputes for personal or small group interests. This has no meaning whatsoever, especially in Vajrayana, creating discord between tantric teachers and disciples and destroying their relationship, or creating disharmony among Vajra brothers and sisters. Such negative karma is extremely grave and terrifying. I've seen some spiritual friends who are disciples of the same lineage and teacher, but the disciples around one teacher often have disharmony, being like water and fire, extremely incompatible. This phenomenon is quite common. Some time ago, an attendant of a teacher told me that the relationship between a certain lay practitioner and another lay practitioner might not be good. I asked why. Because when she comes, the other lay practitioner immediately leaves, and when she returns, the other person wants to leave again. So from their observation, the two people don't get along. I see that whether we study Vajrayana or Sutrayana, if between two spiritual friends, when one person comes in logic, this is called mutually incompatible. When discussing contradictions, when one arrives, the other cannot remain and must immediately leave. It's like when water appears, there cannot be fire in the water. When fire blazes up, the water dries up, just like darkness and light. I think such conflicts between spiritual friends are quite bad. I've heard about some other monasteries where individual monasteries have some conflicts between two great masters. Every time they have meetings or gatherings, as long as one person comes, the other absolutely won't attend the meeting. Others say this, but whether it's actually true or not, I'm not very clear. If it's not true, it's others' slander. If it is true, then regardless of which teacher, it's their mistake. If we, with fellow practitioners and such Dharma friends, don't even have room for temporary consultation or gathering, then how do we treat hateful enemies? How can we, with Mahayana spirit, liberate all other beings who have no connection with us whatsoever? So, this is indeed something we should be concerned about. Actually, divisive speech, if disharmonious relationships arise between people, especially through your words and covert methods to destroy others' relationships, the fault is quite grave. Previously, in the Century of Noble Deeds, there's a story. I'll tell it briefly. After a person was born, his entire body was covered with sores and wounds all over. His mind was also extremely painful, and he cried continuously from childhood. Every day he wailed in suffering without stopping, constantly in great pain. His parents had no choice, so they named him Whale. After growing up, he wandered everywhere, living in extremely painful circumstances. Once, nearby elders said, "Your suffering is so pitiful." It's said that in a certain place in India, there's the medicine king Buddha, a Buddha who can cure both physical and mental illnesses. He is the great physician of the world. Could you go there? There might be a way to cure your disease. Upon hearing this, he was extremely joyful and went to the Buddha. After seeing the Buddha, through the merit and blessing power of his supreme features, his physical illness was immediately cured. His mental illness was gradually healed through practice, and later he attained realization through the Buddha's teachings. The bhikkhus asked what the cause was. What karma did he create in past lives to have such consequences in this life? Later, the Buddha said, in a past life, he was a very wealthy person. This wealthy person competed with another wealthy person. During the competition, the first wealthy person offered much property to the king as bribes and secretly spoke many criticisms about the other before the king, requesting punishment. The king, without detailed analysis or investigation, listened to him and administered punishment. His body was beaten so severely that he suffered tremendously. Later, the second wealthy man's family paid money to ransom him back. After being ransomed, he developed great renunciation toward human existence. Later, he practiced diligently in the mountains and attained the fruition of a Pratyeka Buddha. Through psychic powers, he observed and knew that someone had secretly harmed him before. As a result, using this renunciation as a condition, he attained the sacred fruit. To prevent him from falling into lower realms, he displayed various miraculous powers before him to inspire faith. He also knew that the person he had framed had now attained realization. So at that time, although he confessed before him, later he didn't fall into hell but was directly reborn in the human realm. At that time, because he both confessed and made offerings to him, in this very life he attained realization under the Buddha's teachings. On the other hand, because he had secretly harmed others through covert verbal harm, in this life he became such a sufferer. Therefore, studying Buddhism isn't just theoretical discussion on paper. It should bring help and transformation to our mind stream. Look at yourselves. In your daily lives, have you secretly harmed others, harmed spiritual friends, or harmed other people? If so, will we experience these consequences in the future? I think it's 100% certain. If you haven't purified it through confession, you'll definitely experience it. After you plant this seed, if there are no other external conditions to sever the continuity of this seed, it will definitely ripen and sprout. Similarly, everyone here should repeatedly reflect on your own life. If you have such negative karma, you must confess. Without confession, divisive speech indeed. I see in the Sutra of Verses on the Six Destinies it says that those who speak divisively ultimately become Pishacha ghosts. Pishacha ghosts are a type of ghost very similar to hungry ghosts. Those who speak divisively become like this. Also, in the Compendium of the Essentials of Dharma, it says that those who speak divisively fall into hell and experience boundless suffering of being burned. So after reading these scriptures, some say they fall among ghosts and spirits. Others say divisive speech leads to falling into hell. If you don't believe in cause and effect, that's another matter, because people who don't believe in cause and effect aren't afraid of anything. For them, there's no feeling about it. But for those who believe in cause and effect, isn't it worthwhile to carefully observe our own speech in the future? What we should say, as I taught the other day, should be harmonious speech, gentle language. Whatever we say, try to consider others. For example, between two teachers, or between teacher and disciple, or between any two people. Even between two non-Buddhist people who have conflicts, if we have the ability, we should try to find ways to mediate their relationship, reconcile them, and think of methods. Even if you spend money or effort, anything is fine. In this way, the merit of harmonizing, after some time of mediation and work, as will also be taught in the aspiration to be reborn in the pure realm of Sukhavati, the merit is quite great. For example, if conflicts or wars arise between two tribes, at such times we should find ways to negotiate peace. When two people consistently have bad relationships, as I just mentioned, you can tell from their eye contact when they have bad relationships. You can tell when they speak, oh, these two people definitely don't get along well. As soon as you mention his name, the other person immediately shows a different expression. I'm particularly good at observing this. Sometimes I also believe I've observed incorrectly, thinking these two definitely have conflicts, but later it turns out to be my own conceptual thinking. Very rarely. Generally, 90% of the time I can observe accurately. So in this regard, you city people are indeed insincere due to some unknown karma. On the surface, you all seem to say, hello, hello, with sweet words. But behind the scenes, it might not be like this. I particularly like a teaching from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that we should practice for a long time. Do not destroy spiritual friends. Stay away from evil companions. Always speak harmonious words and you will be born in the land of the immovable one. Everyone should practice this teaching for a long time. Don't destroy the relationships of any spiritual friends. Treat all spiritual friends as your own spiritual teachers, as taught in the Flower Ornament Sutra. Don't associate with evil friends and companions whose words and actions are harmful to you. Otherwise, their bad behaviors will gradually contaminate you. When speaking with others, you should still speak with compassionate words, gentle speech, and harmonious language. When speaking originally, you had a very good relationship with this person, but once you speak, it's all over. Everything is destroyed. Some people are terrifying as soon as they open their mouths, but some people are not like this. Perhaps it's because they have bodhicitta in their mind stream, although they don't speak much. When they say just 1 or 2 sentences, people are convinced both intellectually and emotionally, feeling very comfortable. When listening to them, in many people's minds, streams compassion and bodhicitta naturally arise. Therefore, our daily speech should also not constantly try to destroy others' relationships. This fault is quite grave. Therefore, in your past life experiences, have you created any conflicts between people? Through your words, have their relationships been damaged? If so, we indeed need to confess this. In the future, you should make aspirations not to create such negative karma. The third one is harsh speech, publicly proclaiming the shortcomings of people with unattractive appearances, for example, for those with physical disabilities, blind people, deaf people, etc., calling them blind or deaf to their faces, etc. For example, some lame people or short people, tall people in the world, often calling people flat nose, big ears, fatty, skinny, big fat person, etc. Frequently addressing people through their physical or bodily defects on the surface. Some people even call this a form of art. Actually, speaking such words from your mouth has quite grave consequences. Previously, in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, there's the story of Bhikkhu Hani Victory. I think I've taught this before. Bhikkhu Hani Victory later attained realization, so I won't elaborate on this. When asked about his past lives, the Buddha said he was previously, when the Buddha went out for alms, a little monkey that joyfully offered honey. At that time it was jumping happily and accidentally fell into a pit and died. After dying, it was reborn as a human and later became Bhikkhu Hani Victory. Later the bhikkhus asked why he became like this. In Buddha Kassapa's teachings, he was also a young man. At that time, he said of another person, "You're just like a monkey." After calling him this, he was reborn as a monkey for 500 lifetimes. So, if we speak of others' physical defects, blind, disabled, etc., there are definitely consequences. And saying, "you monkey," like a yak, hungry pig, like a dog, etc., dash some worldly people using particularly harsh language to address others. Speaking this way also has quite grave consequences. I saw in the 17th Karmapa's teaching on the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas a story about the first Karmapa. The first Karmapa actually didn't have very handsome features. His entire facial appearance was like a monkey. What was the reason for this? Previously he had mocked others as monkeys, then was reborn as a monkey for 500 lifetimes. The final lifetime was as the first Karmapa, Dusam Khenpa. At that time, before he entered the Buddhist path, he had a girlfriend. His girlfriend saw that his face looked like a monkey and was particularly ugly, so she abandoned him. He developed renunciation, and from then on he made the aspiration, I should become a very dignified person in every lifetime. Later, according to many sources and blogs online, the 16th and 17th Karmapas were both quite handsome. This is also the power of past life aspirations, many people say. We should say that many of our spiritual friends, whether you're Buddhist or non-Buddhist, many people are quite attached to their own appearance, but in this life some are relatively unattractive. There's no way around it. If you want to change it now, you'd have to get plastic surgery, which would probably cost a lot of money. Whether you have that much money, generally 2,000 or 3,000 yuan might not be enough. So, if you care about future lives, making aspirations is very important. Previously, the 16th Karmapa was said to be very handsome. When he went to the West, especially when he lived in America, there were many wonderful stories about how many people were attached to his dignified physical appearance. There are many accounts. So in our practice, on one hand, on the surface, it appears to be virtuous or non-virtuous karma of speech, but it directly affects our body. Everyone should understand this point. For example, if we speak harshly, in this life it's verbal karma, but actually in future lives, it affects not only speech, but all other aspects of life. It has a certain impact on all aspects. Therefore, in our daily lives, no matter what kind of people we encounter, it's best to maintain our mind stream with mindfulness and vigilance and not speak harshly. I remember Sakya Pandita also said, harsh words that harm others should not be spoken even to enemies. Otherwise, like an echo in a valley, you will immediately receive its retaliation. Regarding bad language and harsh speech, of course you shouldn't speak this way to people you have good relationships with. Everyone understands this. Even to hateful enemies, people you have the worst relationship with, don't compare them to animals or use various harsh worldly language to curse them. This is unnecessary. If you do this, on the surface, it seems like you've rendered them speechless and extremely ashamed, but actually, it's like the valley echo we hear. In cliffs and valleys, when you make a sound, it echoes back to you. Similarly, whatever bad things you say about him today, pointing out his defects, when you reach your next life, what you said will manifest in your own body and you will experience this karmic result. Therefore, regarding harsh speech, everyone should pay attention. This is also a very important matter. But I find that people in cities nowadays, even among some Buddhist practitioners, don't discriminate very well in this regard. I don't know if it's due to past karma or in this lifetime. These Buddhist practitioners seem to think that in terms of behavior, it's like reporting news. It passes by like clouds and smoke, then it's gone, treating it as idle chatter. If that's the case, our Buddhist practice has no great meaning. Therefore, it's also said here that all criticism of others' faults or disrespectful language belongs to harsh speech. If you want to attain liberation, all such language should be abandoned. The Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels states, one should not speak of others' faults, nor point out others' wrongdoings. Free from harsh speech and miserliness, such a person shall attain liberation. This means we cannot speak of others' mistakes or point out others' faults. If one is free from harsh and coarse speech, it's not very difficult for such a person to attain liberation. All language that makes others unhappy should be completely abandoned. Even if it's not coarse, harsh speech, but through gentle means making the other person's mind unpleasant, such language is also included in coarse, harsh speech. On the surface, it doesn't appear to be cursing, but actually through particularly gentle and mild language, they make others extremely sad. So there's a Tibetan saying, harsh words need not be many, delightful food need not be large. I'll roughly translate it like this. It means that harsh language, whether much or little, if it hurts others' hearts, it's all unreasonable. As for food that others enjoy, if you offer it, whether it's large or small food, as long as it expresses your sincere intention, the translation doesn't come out very well, but it's acceptable. The meaning is that as long as you hurt others' hearts, whether your words are many or few, it's already wrong. Whether you use gentle language or coarse speech or another way to mock others, if it makes others very sad, it has already become harsh speech. If you particularly delight someone because everyone's economic situation isn't necessarily the same, if I give you a teacup today, though my economic conditions are limited and I don't have anything grand, just this offering, oh, that's fine. Any delightful offerings and food, as long as they express sincere intention toward others, represent this person's devotion. So generally in the process of speaking, some people's words truly bring many people happiness for a very long time. One sentence spoken is never easily forgotten. Some teachings, pith instructions, or even very ordinary worldly words can have boundless benefit for one's entire life. So it seems that in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, it says, harsh speech destroys loving kindness, the wise can abandon it. Harsh speech destroys loving kindness, so wise people will stay away from it. Always delighting in speaking gentle words, one is born in the heavens. Speaking gentle and soft words for a long time enables you to be reborn in the celestial realms. So some great masters and spiritual friends among us have excellent speaking skills that they've mastered. They seemingly never offend anyone. Whatever they say makes others especially happy and joyful. But some people are not like this. It would be better if they didn't speak. As soon as they speak, they offend so many people. In the end, they themselves know this. I don't know what karma I created in past lives. It's better if I don't speak. Once I speak, it definitely won't work out. Actually, between people, on the surface, we all appear to look the same. But actually, our inner compassion is also different. The function of language and skillful means are also different for each person. Actually, language isn't that difficult. Everyone should learn together. Especially in Buddhism, there are many teachings like the language chapter in The Just King, and also much taught in the Flower Ornament Sutra and Lotus Sutra. When there is loving kindness and altruistic intention in the mind, generally the sounds they produce are directly or indirectly beneficial to beings. Even if on the surface it appears to be harsh speech, actually it benefits many people. Using harsh speech to criticize others, perhaps this harsh speech truly burns away the evil seeds in others' mind streams without remainder. From then on, one criticism makes it so their original bad habits won't easily occur again. There are also such situations. Therefore, I think inner compassion is very important. Especially in front of teachers, spiritual friends, and great masters, speaking random harsh words has even greater negative consequences. Some people, in front of great masters, teachers, and spiritual friends, very serious objects of respect, often speak divisive words, gossip, harsh speech, and coarse language. This way, many Vajra teachers manifestly become displeased and ultimately abandon many great endeavors for benefiting beings and spreading the Dharma. Then one incurs tremendous negative karma. So in front of any spiritual friend, one should be careful about speech. But in today's society, it seems language cannot be controlled. As long as one has the opportunity, they continuously keep talking. This isn't very good either. One should observe through mindfulness and vigilance. When you should speak, the words that should be said should be spoken. Sometimes, when you should speak, you don't say a word. For example, in meetings when everyone is discussing, "Hey, who will speak?" "I won't speak." "He won't speak either." Everyone just sits there in silence. Silent sitting like a hunger strike protest. This isn't good either. Sometimes there's also no need to speak. Everyone says many irrelevant words. Actually, because people communicate with each other mostly through language, understanding language and the propriety of speech is indeed very important. The fourth one we'll discuss is idle chatter. The scope of idle chatter is quite extensive. For example, Brahmin mantras and such are originally not true Dharma, yet considering them to be true Dharma. Not only Brahmins, but actually also non-Buddhists. Various worldly things like worldly novels and movies, and all sorts of random worldly affairs. Originally having no meaning for the mind stream, but some people regard them as true Dharma, beneficial for taming afflictions, then speak various idle chatter. This is also one type. Also, the lewd language of prostitutes that arouses attachment in oneself and others, grandiose discussions about military force, robbery and theft and such, all idle talk that can give rise to attachment, anger and ignorance, all belong to the category of idle chatter. So this has been explained very clearly here. However, in our world today, as science develops more and more, we can say this is an era when people particularly love idle chatter. Now, in all television, movies, internet, and various newspapers and magazines, we can say over 90% is all idle chatter. Nothing but idle chatter. People particularly believe in it, and many people listen to idle chatter and then speak idle chatter themselves. This is such an error. Therefore, this era of rampant idle chatter is particularly severe. We can say it pervades the entire society. Sometimes it appears that true practitioners now have no space to survive, because if you want to practice, all kinds of worldly obstacles appear one after another before you. Dealing with them for 1 or 2 days, when will we ever be able to transcend them? So I've been thinking that perhaps some pith instructions of the secret teachings might be suitable for some worldly people today, because in the secret teachings, some aspects are relatively open. Other individual liberation vows and bodhisattva vows might be slightly better, but especially individual liberation vows in such a society in the future, to truly maintain and uphold them will become increasingly difficult. There's increasingly no living space, no place to survive. So among many spiritual friends here, sometimes you can really see some Buddhists recite mantras and do some virtuous deeds. But those who purely observe their own minds, basically there are none. We often find in big cities people are either watching TV and movies or chatting. Some people with a bit of knowledge spend all day online, on the internet. Originally, this is already an illusory world, and in the illusory world they seek another illusory world. Then chatting online with attachment and anger. Besides this, truly valuable people and valuable knowledge are probably very, very rare. We don't dare to exclude everything, saying there's nothing at all, but what kind of education most people receive and what society has become today, we ourselves are also clear about. In such an era, some discuss military affairs, some discuss worldly attachment, some discuss business affairs. All of these gradually make your mind more and more agitated. As it says in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, accumulating many idle chatter sentences can cause the mind to become confused. Your consciousness becomes deluded, destroying pure conduct and obstructing the path to nirvana. Destroying our pure conduct, that is, the behavior of monastics or lay practitioners. Because this idle chatter directly and indirectly begins to destroy your pure conduct, your path to nirvana becomes increasingly distant. Because every day we practice things that go against the true Dharma. Then before our eyes and in our ears appear various colorful or multifarious external objects, all of which are objects that contradict the true path or liberation. At such times, among us ordinary beings, those who are not seduced by external objects are quite few. So can we protect ourselves in this way? It's very difficult. So it's also taught here, and I especially remind everyone, when others are reciting sutras or mantras, talking eloquently about many irrelevant topics that scatter their minds, will cut off others' accumulation of virtue. The negative karma is extremely severe. Some people, when others are reciting scriptures or practicing, when they're doing meaningful and meritorious activities, they themselves don't want to practice or recite, but start to influence others in front of them. Why did I notice some people talking privately during class yesterday? If you talk, if you alone don't want to listen, that's nothing much, but you should know how many people you're affecting. I see now outside some people studying by listening to recordings. Originally 10 or 20 people are all studying very diligently, but when one person talks, the entire atmosphere is completely disrupted. Everyone's virtue is destroyed because of this. So sometimes when we don't pay attention or observe our tongue, it's still very dangerous. So the Buddhist scriptures also teach 100,000 gates of merit are destroyed by the tongue. 100 diseases enter through the mouth. 100 disasters emerge from the mouth. Many of our problems come from your mouth. Some people have no ability to observe and keep talking constantly, talking during class, and also talking while reciting scriptures. If this is the case, you yourself don't need to recite or practice, but these people beside you still need to practice. I think it's unnecessary to influence them, especially lay practitioners listening to teachings outside don't understand any rules. They've been listening to teachings for so many years, but their behavior is still very inappropriate. Honestly, it would be better not to listen at all. If you really don't want to listen, not listening has no fault either. But influencing others this way is actually not good for yourself either. It will create obstacles to Dharma practice for countless lifetimes. So sometimes in the worldly realm, not only we practitioners, but many worldly people's activities, for example, the novels they write, scripts they compose, and various idle chatter treatises, or what are now called artists, singers, and movie stars, the songs they sing every day delay how many people from meaningful activities. Previously, they often said about some singers that, although on the surface, thousands and tens of thousands of people are intoxicated by their singing and love it very much, behind the scenes, people's spirits have received great stimulation and temptation, and all meaningful activities have been delayed. Therefore, in this ignorant world, sometimes we must admit this blind conformity of humanity. For people with even a little wisdom, when observing with the instrument of Buddhism, the various bacteria in life should also be easy to discover. So it's also taught here that various types of idle chatter on the surface seem to flow naturally from the mouth, but if you observe carefully with wisdom, you'll discover that actually most idle chatter comes from either attachment or hatred. In the process of speaking idle chatter, much attachment and hatred will also arise in one's own and others' mind streams. However much greed, anger, and ignorance you generate, the speaker's mind stream also has that much negative karma. Some people tell stories and read novels, then gather many people. Today I read a novel with a beautiful woman in it, and this woman was like this and that. If they're particularly eloquent, many people might develop attachment. I saw a movie where war broke out between our country and another country, and our country did such and such. You start talking, and by the end some people might develop hatred. Others become confused and develop ignorance. Others begin to praise themselves and disparage others, talking about how powerful we are, making others develop pride. Actually, many afflictions are triggered through others' speech and idle chatter. Originally, everyone knows that generating afflictions like greed, anger, and ignorance is negative karma. This type of negative karma can also be produced through your speech. So when we study the Dharma together with everyone, it shouldn't be like this, but should pacify greed, anger, and ignorance in the mind stream. Why am I willing to teach every day, even if I don't teach much? Willing to teach even a short class, the reason I'm willing to teach. In process of teaching, I also pay attention that speech that truly generates greed, anger, and ignorance cannot be spoken. There's no such expression. Actually, what's related to the Dharma should be teachings that pacify greed, anger, and ignorance. This way, at least while listening to class, negative thoughts will cease. And perhaps in this brief moment of listening to class, perhaps in your mind stream there truly arise thoughts that pacify afflictions and suffering. This is also a type of merit. So when we listen to teachings, some people say listening is tiring, listening every day. Actually, studying the Dharma, indeed, listening to even one class is different from other worldly classes. The reason it's different, because the Dharma, directly or indirectly, is all about countering afflictions. This is the purpose of the Dharma, so such teachings are indeed very necessary for people. Therefore, I hear many Dharma friends continuously read books every day and continuously listen to 1 or 2 classes each day. Such habits should be very good. If you really don't have the ability for study, contemplation, and meditation, as Mifam Rinpoche taught before, for the particularly blessed verses and aspiration prayers from great masters and Buddhist sutras and treatises, reciting them daily is also very good. If you don't even have the ability to recite like this, then choose from all mantras those with special merit and blessings like Avalokiteshvara mantra, Padmasambhava mantra, and Vajrasattva mantra. I think everyone can recite these mantras. This has no difficulty whatsoever, so speak less idle chatter and recite more mantras. It seems that over a year ago there was an elderly person, I might have mentioned this in some teachings, who made an aspiration in front of me to recite 100 million Avalokiteshvara mantras. Today at the entrance, I met this elderly person again. He recognized me. His hearing might not be very good. He doesn't hear sounds very clearly. He took my hand and said he wanted blessings and such. If he can live another year or so, the 100 million will be completed. He has been reciting. In a year and a half, he's been very diligent. He just said he's been reciting very diligently. In a year and a half, he's recited over 50 million Avalokiteshvara mantras. He still needs over 40 million to reach 100 million. In another year or so, he'll have completed 100 million. He said he sleeps relatively little at night. It seems I mentioned this before. Over a year ago, how old was that elderly man who made the aspiration to recite 100 million mantras? Do you remember? Who can remember clearly? If you remember clearly, I'll give a reward. Did I mention it or not? 70-something years old. What did I say? At that time, it seems he had already recited 300 million before. 70-something. You said that. How many had he recited before? I should go back and check. How many had he recited before? When he was a householder before, he created quite a lot of negative karma. My father and he were good friends when they were young, so wherever he sees me, he seems very happy. Just now I was quite busy, but he kept holding my hand and wouldn't let go. I said, let's talk again after some time. I'm particularly busy today. Elderly people are all like this. Old bodhisattvas are very good. What follows is about during sutra recitation and mantra chanting periods. If you mix in some idle talk, then no matter how many mantras you recite, there won't be much achievement or great merit. Generally speaking, when we recite liturgies and prayer books, try not to intersperse idle talk in between. If during your sutra recitation, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok didn't particularly oppose reading books, some Dharma questions in between weren't particularly opposed. Some teachers require that even this not be allowed. We before, especially at the beginning when we were young, particularly loved study and contemplation. Reciting sutras while reading books was quite common, sometimes asking each other about some Dharma principles in between. But generally when reciting sutras, it's better to recite everything from beginning to end completely, especially in monastic assemblies. If one person chatters idly, then all the virtue of the entire Sangha will be destroyed in this person's hands. And it will also damage the merit accumulated by benefactors. Therefore, generally those with good practice won't casually speak idle chatter. Previously, in the record of the exalted acts of Buddhist monastics from Han China, there was Chan Master Datong from the Song dynasty, who himself said that he led monks for 30 years and had never joked or laughed, probably similar to Langri Thangpa, and his deportment was very dignified. Actually, people with wisdom and realization generally won't speak much idle talk with others. If we have no practice or realization in our mind stream, we're often particularly interested in irrelevant worldly speech. So when we recite sutras and perform Buddhist activities, we shouldn't speak much idle talk. Originally in India, except for those endowed with merit and free from faults, others had no qualification to enjoy donations, and the Buddha didn't permit this in the relevant sutras. However, now some of us, having learned just one or two sets of tantric liturgies or individual liturgies like the liberation in the intermediate state through hearing from Tibet, think everything is perfect. In Han areas too, after learning morning and evening services well, they think they've become monastics. Just knowing how to recite, they unscrupulously enjoy donations through tantric liturgical methods. If one hasn't received empowerment, doesn't possess the vows, knows nothing about generation and completion stages, and hasn't completed recitation practice, casually reciting secret mantra liturgies becomes like burn chanting. This negative karma is quite severe. The so-called ritual performers nowadays, some people can only recite liturgies and sutras, but have never visualized in their minds. They understand nothing about the basic principles and teachings of generation and completion stages. In such circumstances, if you don't recite seriously and conscientiously but enjoy donations, the negative consequences are quite great. Han areas are like this, and Tibetan areas are like this too. It's best to have pure precepts in one's mind stream and maintain them with mindfulness and vigilance, otherwise there are certain difficulties. The flower garland also teaches that study, contemplation, and meditation should be based on pure precepts. Only this way can one enjoy devotees' offerings. Actually, black wealth is like burning iron balls. Only those with iron teeth endowed with the union of generation and completion stages can enjoy it. If ordinary, common people enjoy it, they only bring suffering upon themselves and burn their mind stream. As the verse says, black donations are the blade of life. Excessive enjoyment cuts the root of liberation's life. Actually, devotees' donations, if you don't have genuine practice realization, enjoying them has certain negative consequences. The Buddha speaks of unprecedented causes and conditions. Sutra also says, rather cut one's own flesh to feed one's mouth than receive others' offerings with a corrupted mind. It's better to use one's own flesh for sustenance than to sustain oneself with wrong livelihood and corrupted mind, receiving such offerings from others. Not to mention being endowed with generation and completion stages. Some people can't even read fluently, merely recognizing words and phrases. Just being able to orally recite the Diamond Sutra and liberation in the intermediate state through hearing, thinking they've already become monastics and practitioners. Actually, it's not like this. Especially for liturgies, the most important part is mantra recitation. If during mantra recitation you open the terma treasury of idle chatter, that is, speaking various attachment and hatred-related irrelevant words to pass time, the result will only harm others and oneself. While continuously reciting mantras, for example, when we recite a liturgy and then recite Vajrasattva mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum, after 3 or 4 repetitions, hey, come here, let me talk to you. What's the recent news saying? Did your family send money? Continuously talking to each other about such inappropriate things. I've mentioned before that during the Song dynasty, there was Chan Master Guangqiao An. When he was at Qingtai Temple, he had psychic powers. Once while in meditation, he observed 2 monks talking by the railing. First, devas protected them, but after a while the devas left. Then ghosts and spirits began to scold them. After a while, the ghosts and spirits prepared to harm them, even sweeping away their footprints. Later, he inquired and learned that initially they discussed the Dharma, but later talked about benefactors' wealth. So even celestial beings observe discussions about benefactors' wealth and irrelevant speech. Therefore, monastics should usually abandon idle chatter, remaining silent and diligently reciting. This point is very important. Not only monastics, but including lay practitioners and many people, we should wholeheartedly recite and try our best to speak less idle chatter. Try not to speak irrelevant words. This is truly very important for practitioners. It seems the Buddha also said in some sutra, if one can avoid idle chatter, the mouth constantly emits wonderful fragrance like the blue lotus, and in each birth one encounters the Buddha. If one constantly speaks wonderful words and doesn't speak idle chatter, it's like a blue lotus. This person will encounter the Dharma in every lifetime. So the fragrance that comes from their mouth, this is probably also a metaphor. Therefore, in our daily speech, try to speak less idle talk and recite more sutras, or speak words beneficial to beings, speak some language beneficial to sentient beings. Alright, that's all for today.
Jupun Tunen Dwa Bangarangara Bana Asadarda Bangarangara Bana Asadarda Bangarangara Bana Asadarda